Are you a hardworking dad, juggling family responsibilities while dreaming of building wealth through real estate? Welcome to the Invested Fathers Podcast, where we explore how to balance investing and fatherhood. I'm your host, Kenny Johnson, founder of East West Capital. Over the past 5 years, I've been buying real estate to free up my time and secure my family's future. Now I'm here to help you do the same. Join me as we navigate the real estate world together, building wealth and strengthening our families. As my grandma always said, East West, home's best.
Angel, what's up, buddy?
How you doing?
Good. Thank you for being here. Angel, you're a host of your own podcast, so thanks for being a guest on my podcast today.
Hey, man, I really appreciate you having me. And yes, it's kind of different always being on this side of things, but nonetheless, I love having great conversations with good people. So
awesome. Angel, tell us a little bit about your business right now. What are you up to?
Yeah, for sure. So my name is Angel Gonzalez. I'm actually the managing partner of Eastern Private Capital. What we do is we actually run multiple things. So we are a firm that focuses on private money. And that's important is because when I started out, we really were a firm that focused on operating real estate and really looking at office as kind of our asset class of choice. Well, due to the markets, things changing over, we started transitioning more into the industrial side of things. And that, so we started doing industrial acquisitions, partnering, different things like that. Some of the ground up development stuff with car washes. And ultimately what that kind of opened up was the pathways to other businesses. So one of the things that we've done is that we were like, well, we love syndicating deals. We love partnering with people, but some of the times there were some headwinds that we were creating because we had to either wait on people or different things. So then we subsequently opened a fund, which is a KPC value add fund. So that allowed us to really be able to scale a little bit faster by pooling people together inside of a fund instead where we could just do transaction after transaction. And so we really focused on that, and that has actually gone pretty well, but we still felt like we were missing the mark. And so we started kind of focusing on, okay, what are other things that we can be looking at? Because my expertise comes from the world of financial banking and then executive management for over 20 years. And I was like, well, a lot of people are asking me questions now that I used to ask of my mentors or people that I was kind of following. And so that kind of evolved into us not only as a firm doing real estate, but now we actually are now even focused on the idea of partnering on other businesses that are looking to grow and develop and taking the same concept that we do for the real estate component of our business. But now we're going to be focusing as well on really acquiring businesses where we could pretty much help with the infrastructure and things like that to really kind of, like I said, help them scale to a better place while we're part of that rise. So we're transitioning more into just a private equity firm because of kind of the lay of the land, but it's been quite the journey from real estate and now into partnerships and in businesses as well.
Angel, you're a rock star. That's awesome. Looks like you're just constantly trying to use your resources, be a good steward of what the knowledge you've had to continue the growth. And really, it seems like you're helping a whole nother group of people now. I mean, there was the real estate aspect and kind of its own inner circles there. But as you've expanded the need of what you are seeing in your own circles of influence, these businesses are needing help. You're not just helping them with like capital and growing, but knowledge and like systems and like how operations, how are these things run? Is that right?
Yeah, it's actually kind of funny because I actually was just having this conversation with my wife yesterday because she's like, what the heck is going on? And I'm just like, are you like becoming essentially like a fractional COO type or what's going on? Because a lot of times, I always think about businesses as really the 4 Ps, right? It's either going to be the people, it's going to be a product, it's going to be a process, or it's going to be profit. It's really that simple. But a lot of times when people are focused on the people and the profit or the process, they forget one of the P's in there. For me, I feel like as I'm kind of evolving more and more in some of the not only because of the masterminds I've been on or because of the people that have really supported us, it's truly become one of those moments where now I'm like, wow, I can kind of identify where that disconnect is a little bit faster than some. And also because we have so much infrastructure and so much partnerships around infrastructure that enables me to be able to be like, oh, you guys are missing this, but more importantly, how about we use these resources to elevate your business? And now we become an active participant. Just about raising the capital. I mean, that is a component of what we do, But if we can be an intentional partner, especially helping businesses, like one of them that completely shocked me that I'm part of now has to do with wellness and fertility. I never saw that part of me being part of it, but it's kind of interesting because I dealt with that. And so now being able to take some of their things that I've struggled with or some of the things that impact me personally and be able to help a cause like that, it just completely changes the dynamic, which is what I love.
Man, that's awesome. We're people and we have our own flavor. I don't know how else to say it. Sounds weird, but you're also more interested in a certain type of business like this infertility or wellness type of business. And that just gives us more value in our life. We're not just trading dollars and looking at the profits. Like you said, like one of the P's is the numbers. That matters, but this other thing matters too, the people and the process and et cetera. So really cool, man. Let's go back, Angel. What was your view of fatherhood as a kid growing up? What was it like with your dad or your family? Let's just start there.
Quite frankly, it's quite challenging from my perspective, and here's why: is because I'm actually was born and raised in Panama City, Panama, as a young person, and one of the things that happened is that my family, especially in the '80s, my parents were like, "Hey, if we stay in Panama, in the way that the state of Panama is at that time, we're not going to be able to give our kid the life that we really want." And so they took the leap and they moved to the U.S. But part of that was that I had to stay back. And so I had one of those situations where, for the better part of my youth, I actually was without my actual biological parent. But one of the things that I love about my family's super close, and I'm actually the oldest grandchild. So I had the ability to have aunts and uncles and people that poured into me in a serious way because they didn't want me to feel like I was lesser or missing out on things. So from that standpoint, I was very blessed because I got truly raised by the village experience as a younger person. But with that in mind, it doesn't matter how much love, how much people pour into you, it's still not your parents. And so for me, one of those things that challenged me, especially as I started progressing my life more toward the Christian boarding school route, I always felt like out of all my family members, because I was their oldest grandchild, they wanted to really focus on my education, focus on my growth and development in order to kind of be able to be good steward and kind of have an example for my cousins that were coming up along the way. So the thing was, I realized early on that, I was going to have a unique journey, but that journey was going to be filled with a lot of really good people in it. But then the ultimate goal was at some point, I'd like to get back to my parents, right? Mm-hmm. So that did happen later in life. I was getting more towards my early teens at that point. But what really is kind of a beautiful thing about having challenges like that, it starts helping you shape in an early life the things that you liked and the things that you didn't like. And so for me, it was one of those things where I really did not like not having my biological family, but I loved the way my family's relationship as a whole was. So I was just so growing up, I was thinking, if I can somehow figure out how to retain this relational component of a close-knit family dynamic and add the component of having the parents in the home all the time, now what does that look like for the child being raised? Mm-hmm. And so I almost kind of felt like I knew what I didn't want and I knew what I completely received. And as I was growing up, I was actually more intentional, I think, than a lot of other males that I grew up with that played college football. I was the guy that was more like, I'm more about long-term family eventually, not so much some of the things that some of my other friends were about. And so there was a point in the road down the line where I went one direction while some of my friends stayed in that, like going out, hanging out in the lake, having all the fun. I was like, hey, that's not where my value system lies. My value system lies with faith, lies with really my family dynamic. So what do I need to prepare for to be that person that could receive that down the line? So for me, a lot of it was just trying to understand. And yes, I did get to my parents. I did have a lot of influence from later down the line. But at that point, one of the things that I will be completely transparent about is that your relationship is different because at that point you're older. At that point, you had many years without that presence. So when they come in your life, it's almost more like another aunt and uncle coming back in your life versus a parent because you're like, I don't know what this feeling is, right? Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of where my journey was a little unique to start with. But then as I fast forwarded my relationship with my mother, I love having that relationship. My dad is still a little bit more of an exchange player in our current dynamic, but as a girl dad, I take that even more seriously because of that experience. So I'm the kind of guy who cooks for my kids every morning, tries to make sure I cook for my daughters every night. I spend an average of about an hour and a half in the morning and 2 to 3 hours at night that I'm like, everyone else, I'm sorry, but this is my kids' time. And so that's kind of part of the intentionality, is just because I really take it serious.
You had a decision to make when you were, I mean, when were you left on your, like two, like, do you even remember?
Yeah, I was 2.5 almost.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So you probably have zero memories. You probably told stories of your parents, I would think, but you had a decision to make to rather basically go cry and say, woe is me and no one loves me. And I'm sure you had these thoughts that, were in your head that you wrestled with, or you could look at the positive sides of things, see the values of the, being raised by the village, still feel like there was something missing. But what you've done now is, through that struggle and discomfort and hurt, you've leaned so much further now. And this is what I value. And as your peers, your high school buddies, your college buddies are doing things, you're like, no, I've now solidified my values early on, which I think is a huge step in anyone's life. What are your values? Who are you? What are things that really matter to you? Answering those questions. Everything can't matter to you. Only certain things we can focus on. And family and that unit, I think that closeness has shaped you. And I would think that was just music to the ears of your future wife. This guy is exactly the kind of guy I want to marry, because this is what matters to me too. And now you're a girl dad, you said. So tell us about fatherhood today. What's it like? What are you guys doing?
Man, I got to tell you that anyone that is listening has not had the opportunity or has the opportunity to have their kids close. And all I would say is this: never take those moments for granted and really lean in as much as you can. The reason why I say that is that my wife and I are truly busy. I mean, we run a firm. She also had a high power job at one of the largest, if not the largest, wealth management firm in the country. And so she's part of that. And as we're kind of doing all the things, we have a book, we have a podcast. I mean, we have a lot going on. But one of the things that we always think about and we talk a lot, and it's not easy. So I just want to make sure everyone knows it's not easy, but we always are like, where are we failing and what can we improve? And I don't mean necessarily failing in the word of fail, because I always believe we either win or we learn. Those are really your only options. Not failure. Failure, there's so many things you can take away from challenges that arise in your life. That's really, to me, it's like the dumbest thing I heard: win or fail or lose. It's win or learn. And so we talk about the fact that we're like, look, where do we feel like we're too much on our phones? Do we feel like we're not doing enough activities with our kids? We're actually very fortunate. We live in Denver, Colorado, especially more like in the Golden area. So my backdrop is mountains. So we were like this last week, taking our kids out and really being with them. We try to make sure that we have, like, I don't know what membership we don't have at this point to the zoo and this and the other, but it's really about like, okay, every weekend can we spend meaningful time, and then also explaining as much as you can what's going on. Like my kids every morning, hey, Dad, where are you going? I'm going to work. Here's why. Dad, what's going on? I'm doing this. Here's why. A lot of times when I grew up, it was because I said so, or that was just the law. But to me, I always fell back to what I said earlier, is that to me was flawed. And so I started thinking, why did I hate that? Because it wasn't giving me information. It wasn't giving me anything that I could use. And so now when I talk about stuff and I explain it to my girls, it's actually kind of funny. I have a soon-to-be 1-year-old, a 2-year-old, and soon-to-be, she's 3 years old, but in this fall she'll be 4. My 4-year-old, it's in some aspects that when she asks me questions about work or anything we're doing, it's really cool because they're involved. I remember when her first tour, I think she was 16 months or 18 months, somewhere around there. She's running up and down the hallways. Well, my daughter knows real estate. She understands. She may not understand conceptually how to do the strategies and underwriting and all that, but she knows mom and dad like real estate. They like to fix buildings. They like to make things look pretty. Sometimes they like to be like, hey, can we come to the office? So one of the things that's kind of funny in our office setup, growing up, we had the pack and play toys right there. Like, and some of the people that worked with us in the office are like, are you okay if I bring my kid to work someday? I'm like, yeah. That's kind of the whole presence of why we did what we were doing. Is the idea is incorporate them. When we wrote our book, we told our kids we were writing a book. We had them hold it up once it was actually completed. They were the first ones to lay their hands on the book. Like, it was one of those things where all these moments we were like, take a picture, let's talk about it, let's enjoy it. So I say all this because there's one key takeaway. Get them involved. Don't alienate your kids. Don't be the people that feel like, hey, whatever you're doing, whatever walk of life you're at, the more you get them involved, you might not know the impact you're having today, how that's going to resonate with them down the line. But my hope is that's a little bit better foot forward when it comes to understanding financials, understanding responsibility, understanding real estate, all these things. I'm hoping through osmosis, they're going to have a leg up on a lot of people because they've been doing it since they were born. My youngest daughter, I think it was only on month 4 or something like that. My wife and I, we like to do dinner events for our investors and different things. I have videos with my daughters and all of them. And actually it was funny. She slept better in these loud rooms. And as soon as they got quiet, she would start crying. We were like, okay, time out. What's happening here? Kind of stuff that we're talking about.
No, that's great. And you're crafting this intentionally. Going back to you were hurt, you were alone, no one was answering your questions of why is this happening? Well, because I said so. And now you're going, okay, this is how we're going to raise our family. We're going to make sure they're included, they're involved. I'm going to, if there's a question or if they want to see me writing a book, I'm going to tell them why I'm writing this book. I'm going to explain. I hear people say, why? The kids are all asking why. You're answering the why before they even have a chance to ask it. You're getting ahead of the game on the why questions, aren't you?
Well, yeah. It's important to do that. And I will say, and just to add on us, you will get frustrated because I do.
Oh, yeah, I know. We're talking like, oh, everything's great. We're sitting down with our kids and, we have all the time in the world for them. But I got this meeting right now. They have all the time in the world. So come draw with me. So yes, I get it. There's definitely a balance and they're going to hopefully pick up on, okay, dad doesn't have all the time to do this, but he does listen to me and he says it with a smile. He's not yelling. Angel, we had talked just very briefly on sort of a certain compassion and desire for girl dads specifically. To be a father of 3 girls, what's that been like? What have you learned? Tell me some of that experience.
It's interesting because we didn't plan it this way, but some of my college buddies and I, we're very fortunate that after many years of us kind of being all over the country, we're all within about, a few of us are within like 15 minutes of each other. And we all have girls. And so it's been interesting because one of the things that I've also found out as I start talking to them about the girl dad experience, we find it to be a little bit different than having a boy, because I would tell you personally, for me, if I would have had a boy, the way my heart and the way I would have probably handled it initially would have been a little bit rougher. And the reason why I say that is I grew up in this mindset, especially from Latin America and my family, where it's like, guys don't cry, macho, boom, boom, boom. Then I got presented with a daughter and I'm sitting here like, what do I do now? And so I would tell you, it softens you. It makes you have to you think through things a little bit differently, because I look at it from like, at some point, if my Almighty allows me to be able to walk them down the aisle, I want there to be certain things that I have done or helped with to make sure that that's a smooth transition. Meaning, can they stand alone on their own? Do they have the right self-esteem? Do they have the right value ladders that they are connected with? Do they have the right support? And so one of the things I think about a lot as being a girl dad is, okay, I can't just be tough and I can't just have a certain stance. I have to be more open and more dynamic through emotions, wearing tiaras, doing all types of stuff that I never envisioned my life doing. Again, I played middle linebacker in college. I just want to, and I never thought I'd be wearing tiaras. Okay, like that's not.
I love it. That's a different level of toughness. I want to just say that. That's like, I don't care what anyone thinks of me. I got a tiara on my head with this 3-year-old girl. Come at me. Just try.
And so it's just been one of those journeys where you're just like, you realize that it makes you so much more, not only intentional, because I think you'd be intentional at whatever parent, girl, boy, whatever. But I think what it made me do is realize that I had to think a little bit more forward thinking about things. So I started thinking more about the end in mind and working my way, reverse engineering, and as to what that could look like. And then also it's just that, again, I do believe that I want them to have, because one of the things that my wife talks about, that I think is important for people to know, a lot of times women especially in roles like my wife, they're one of few. And one of the things why is because there's a lot of ceilings. Like all you should be doing is having kids and staying at home, or maybe having kids and working jobs that allow you to have it in a certain way. My wife doesn't believe in that. My wife really believes that she can be a mom, but at the same time go after anything that's in front of her. And quite frankly, it's kind of been sad to watch my wife's journey in some aspects, because every time she's hit, I mean, she's worked for major organizations at high levels like Wells Fargo and a couple other companies now. And like I said, she's usually one of the only females in the room. And that presents a whole world of different dynamics when you're leading with when you're reporting to CEOs of major companies and things like that, and how they value or view women. And so a lot of times I think about this feeling that my wife consistently had placed upon her, that she broke through and was like, not happening, no way, no how. And now with our daughters, we're trying to basically let them know anything is possible. It's really the mindset that drives everything. So if everything here in these 6 inches are in alignment, it doesn't matter if you're male or female, you can go execute it. And that's kind of the extra layer of intentionality, is just making sure they know that the world's in front of them. They just got to get after it.
Where did you start? I mean, obviously you had an expectation in mind of like, I'm going to have a boy. We're going to kind of get him tough, linebacker.
Yeah, but I'm still waiting for that one. I was like,
hey, there's still hope, right? But there was a shift in, okay, expectations were not there. We have the first girl, second girl, third girl. Okay, I'm a girl dad. Like it's happening by choice or not. This is what it is. So you started going down that road, and I'm recognizing you're applying business principles. Hey, start at the end in mind, work your way backwards. How do I want this to go? Okay, what do I need to do today to kind of make that bridge? Where did you turn to start getting more education and knowledge? Where did that come from? Or was it just kind of like internal, like, this is what I want to do?
well, I think it's got to be a combination. I think the first part is it was the internal component, because of, like I said, I had a lot of support being brought up, and a majority of my family is female. So I felt like there was a little bit there already that was kind of like resonating. I saw the challenges they had. And as a guy, I didn't have those same challenges. So I started to be like, okay, how do I navigate through that? But then as I talk about the journey of surrounding yourselves with people that have share a lot of the value systems you do. Actually, it's funny, on my podcast, someone said this and they were like, whoever said that opposites attract is dumb. But I actually think that there's a lot there that was kind of funny, because it's true. I'm not looking for people that are opposite of me. I'm looking for people that have the same value structure and systems as I do in faith and all these things. And then if I can be in alignment with their family dynamics and things like that, what does that do for me? So I do find myself in more room with Christian girl dads. I do find myself consistently being in those rooms where people are like, have you read this book, or have you listened to this thing, or have you seen so-and-so at doing this, and how would we do it differently? So you really have to use, and it's funny you said it earlier, the business principles that we use, a lot of those things come from other places like family dynamics. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of things I will say is you can somehow bridge those two together. You start realizing a lot of the same components apply. You got to look for mentors. You got to look for people put yourself in the same room. You got to have like-minded people. You want to make sure that you really are using every resource out there possible in order to really make the kind of shift that you really want. Because for me, I knew it was going to be tough to be a girl dad, because that's just not natural for me. Mm-hmm. So I be one of those guys, and I still have some times where I'm like, oh, and then I have to like brace myself, rethink, like, Ray, what was the reasoning that I remember that I wasn't going to handle this way? Oh, because my mentor over here told me that he had a challenge with his daughter, and this is why. And so you just got to be open to all and every way of receiving information.
Angel, as you think about your journey through fatherhood, I do feel like there's a lot of dads listening who are going through something right now that they'd rather need some encouragement or some inspiration, or maybe, just like a kick in the pants or something to change their mindset. What was a challenge that you faced in the role of either dad or husband that you could share? What was it, and how did you come out of it, or are you maybe still in it?
Well, I would like to say I came out of it, but the reality of it, this is going to be I call it my lifelong demon that I will always fight. I'm a very, I'm not, I don't say I'm quick to anger, but I am one of those guys that's very passionate. And one of the things that I'm challenged by is a lot of times is because I am so driven and I'm so much like get things done guy. it makes it challenging because my expectations are not the same that someone else may have on themselves. I'm about to this over. I'm 10 years married, and so I'm about to hit double digits, which I'm like, woo, making it for the first level. But because now I see like I got a couple mentors that are like, you're 30, and I'm like, okay, I got 4 more levels to at least go still.
Right. I'm on level 1 too, by the way. We've been married for, I think 10 years. I'm sorry. I shouldn't say I think 10 years. I already got strike. We've been married for 10 years.
No problem. Yeah, that's awesome. But no, it's one of those things that I would tell you that because of the fact that I remember early on with my wife, I would be like, okay, let's do this. And in my mind, I mean, let's do it now. Let's get it done now. And in her mind, it was, okay, we're going to do this. And so by not setting proper expectations on timelines and things like that, I got frustrated and I get angry. And when I was, and I would say, when I get angry, I'm not the most pleasant guy. I'm not the guy who's going to be like throwing stuff, yelling off the rooftops, but I'm very stern. My eyes get pointed. I'm very much like, what's going on? Because I hate time wasters. And my wife's like, well, you never told me that. Like, when? And you always are after me. And same thing with my kids now. As a girl dad, I'm trying to be like, if I say, hey, clean up the toys, and sometimes in the beginning, I used to just get frustrated because I don't think they understood I meant now. And so now I try to be like, hey, in the next 5 minutes, we're going to go pick up toys. Can you get ready for the cleanup song? And now my daughters are like, oh yeah. And it's like, and I'm like, if I would have said it the way I initially said in the beginning, I would not, I have resentment, I get anger, I get a frustration. Well, when you all of a sudden lay the proper expectations, even to your 2-year-old, you got to be like, hey, we're doing this. And sometimes we're like, yeah, 1 more minute. So that kind of always drives me a little crazy for that 1 more minute thing. But at the end of it all I'm saying is that now it's fun for them. They're like, they go to Alexa, they ask for the cleanup song. We didn't used to use the Alexa. Now that my kids are way beyond me in technology, which kind of freaks me out. But that's kind of the things I'm talking about is that you just know your personal issues and demons and things, and then see how you can take those bad energies and make them more positive and really take that step back and consistently work on them.
Thank you. Wow. That's awesome. There's the business world, right? And you give people assignments. It's very clear on when it should be done. And there's expectations there. And there's the fatherhood world. Completely upside down.
Yeah.
Okay, guys, it's time to eat. Where's my family? Why are people, and then, oh, that person just, we're still eating. Come back here. Oh, door slams. What's happening to my life? I have no control here.
Oh, definitely.
It's great. Yeah. My 3-year-old daughter is a firecracker, and she's everything. I shouldn't say my son isn't, but Moses was so obedient and gentle and sweet. And, I think I spanked him once. Like, just, you look at him, with sternness, and he's like, oh, I'm so sorry. And Daphne is like just running away from us with like a knife in her hands. What did we do differently? This anyway. So I don't know if you can resonate at all.
Oh, I'll resonate. But it is my second one that's the same run away.
I'm like, what? Where did you learn that? And why is that okay? I'd like to think that those with the passionate child, our jobs as dad is just to harness that passion for them to do good. It's not a bad thing for them to be passionate and to have those emotions. We just have to make sure they're used for good, right?
Don't forget, my wife and I, we look at each other like, who's getting that from?
Oh yeah.
Both guilty, I think, but.
Oh yeah. No, I drop the line all the time. She is your daughter, whenever that happens. All right. So one of the things that you've touched on, your wife, the busyness of life. You mentioned the book, the podcast, obviously the business, and then your wife working or, choosing to do these things that are probably very engaging, where she's wearing hats, but, she's always wearing the mom hat and you're always wearing the dad hat. How has that been something that busy families out there can say, hey, we're busy too, help us maybe set those boundaries, or what are things that are non-negotiables or things that you've kind of set as your own family unit?
You actually said the perfect phrase. You have got to come up with non-negotiables. I think it starts there, because if you don't even know where your lines are, no one else will. Let's just get that out the way. And this is something I learned early with my first daughter. is that, and I was very blessed because I had a COVID baby as my first daughter. So I had a little bit of grace where I didn't have to bring her out into the world right away. And I had stages to kind of fumble a little bit. I did not have that with my subsequent daughters, but it's definitely something that it taught me early on was what are my non-negotiables? Like, where do I draw the line between what is allowable and not? The other thing too is in which you touched on earlier. I think of my journey with my family the same way I do my business because I'm the same person. So at the end of the day, all I'm doing is a different activity at that time, but a lot of the principles are the same. Like, for example, my wife and I actually, I think today at like from 12:30, 1:30. Yeah. So my wife and I, we actually, when like we have a financial discussion on our calendar that she sends me, she'll send me a calendar for everything related to the kids have stuff. It's on my calendar. If it's something where we have to discuss financials, discuss how we're going to do something with the kids, whatever, it goes on the calendar. It's intentional time blocking, right? Because now I know that for about an hour and a half, my wife and I are going to have those painful conversations about whatever it might be, or the great conversation of whatever it may be, because they usually tend to be a little bit of both, right?
Mm-hmm.
We would be like, hey, how do we want to parent? Well, sometimes because of our busy schedule, we start just parenting and then we all of a sudden are like, hey, wait, that's not the same thing the other person is doing.
Mm-hmm.
So we just set aside time to be like parenting discussion, right? So I will say is, I feel, and I'm not saying everyone has to be so calendar driven, but we are. And so we try to make sure that we put those blocks in there so that it allows us to make sure we never bypass the important discussions that we have to have. So that's one of the non-negotiables for us. Making sure we allocate time for the things that matter. And then the other component I would say that is really part of that non-negotiability is making sure that we are always, every week, we try to figure out, so we have a rest day and we have an activities day. So we always typically, for us, for the most part, it's Saturday because I try to revolve my life around NFL football. Don't talk about it. So, well, my wife and I are season ticket holders for football. And so we don't miss games. We're Viking fans. So whoever's a Packer fan out there, don't like you. I'm sorry. But what I was going to say is that we know that that's something that happens on Sunday. So we might watch a lot of football. So we know activity day is Saturday. But now our daughters are part of the football experience too. So every year we brought a new kid into that fold. So now like our daughter or our third daughter, our other two are telling her, this is your year. This is your year. So she gets they're all excited, but they have their seats. They come there. We're going to make this a whole family girl football. Think about it.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I can see it now, man. They're going to be the toughest girls out there.
Oh, dude, I planted that. You know, sometimes it's kind of funny because they'll be watching Daniel the Tiger or something like that. And all of a sudden they're like, Dad, I'm like, yeah, can we watch football? I'm like,
bless you.
Oh, there's also
mission accomplished. Oh, that's great, man. I want to touch on maybe two other topics. I want to touch on the topic of your faith. You've mentioned it a few times, and you know we're definitely set understanding who you are, Angel. You know, in regards to the business and your values, you like to have fun, you like football. You have some, you know, hey, let's get this done now, and just I think it's awesome the way you block out these schedules with your wife. You know, you say that's not for everybody, but hey, you're on a different level of your top 1% here. I'm like, I want to achieve great things. I want to be the best I can. And I hope that our audience is resonating with that as well. And this is requiring, hey, time is so important for me that if we're going to have a conversation on finances or parenting or, you know, the way you discipline this, we may not be able to do it on the fly potentially, but if we schedule it, we're going to have a really intentional thing here, just intentionality. I feel like that's what I'm seeing. So in regards to your faith, how has that influenced the way you father and husband as well? And what role has that played in your family?
Man, I would have to say every fiber of what we do has a lot to do at least in our family, in our household around that, because I even was saving our company motto is faith, family, giving. And there's a reason for that. You know, like you go into college, you get in the whirlwind of school and sports and all these things, and your faith kind of gets set aside. It's not cool to talk about being a Christian. It's not cool to talk about the fact that you're going to Bible study or this, that, and the other. And one of those things that I would tell you I made a mistake in is that I fell into that trap. I fell into the trap of like, I want to be cool and I want to be the guy that other people see this way. So let me basically take my actual value ladder and belief systems and kind of hide them. And that was probably one of the worst things I've ever done. That's one of the things my hope is when I talk to people or kids or try to mentor others, I really try to make sure that they understand they do not have to set aside who they are in order to achieve great things. The other component of faith to me, as I look at it, is I don't look at just faith in my Christianity, because I think that's important. I try to read with my wife every night. We have our moment where we literally do our discussions. We try to do our church thing on Sundays, whatever it is, but that's just one part of it. The other part is faith in people and faith in really everything that we do, because a lot of times I think during the challenging times, whether it's in your marriage, whether it's in your business, whether it's in whatever facet that you're dealing with challenges out there, the number one thing that sometimes that people do not embrace is the faith component of it, because that faith allows you to have the proper optimistic outcome already being part of your DNA. A lot of faith is because you literally cannot see what it is that's on the other side. You cannot see if that's going to be a great employee. You cannot see if your kids are going to turn out great. You cannot see if your business is going down the right path. But what you can do is have the right faith and then build the infrastructure around your faith in order to execute. And so a lot of times I feel like I don't really have a lot of bad days. I have challenging days, but I don't have bad days because I'm always looking at it as in a very optimistic lens, like, hey, the future is bright. The things are going to be there. And when I do feel like I'm down, I don't have to necessarily go all the way down, because I have a floor and my floor is my maker. And so at that point, I don't even get into the spirals that others might, especially running a business that, has this ebbs and flow. I mean, I've had extremely challenging times with when it comes to partnerships and legal, and I've had extremely successful times when it comes to output. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, it didn't matter, because my floor was where my maker and I believe. And I think that that's a huge part of why I always will get back up, no matter how much I fall, is because I always will have that lens.
That's right. And thank you for sharing all that, Angel. I feel like this has been a message I'm hearing over and over again. And it's that aspect of risk. When you hear the word risk, there's rather a positive, like, ooh, I like risk. Like, risk means reward. Or you're like, your stomach sinks, like, ooh, risk. Like, I don't want to be risky. Kenny, you're risky. Is that a good or bad thing? I mean, I could take that as a positive, or I could take that as a negative. But, what is risk? It's faith, right? It's like, I don't know what's going to happen here. I don't want to be blindly walking into the situation without being prepared or doing due diligence and whatnot. But what would you say to the investor, Dad, to someone who, and those are the same thing, right? Like, investing fathers, that's the whole podcast. And the whole point is there's a business world and there's a fatherhood world. And we're talking about both, but you're the same person living in both worlds. So to the investing father, how should we view risk? How do you view risk?
I think risk, and actually, I love that question of risk, because for me, I will tell you that coming from that banking and financial background, like, risk mitigation has always been part of my DNA. But more importantly, I don't let it paralyze, right? Because I think that one of the things that happens when you think of risk, and back to your poll, is some people are like completely have no regulator on risk, and that's completely dangerous. And some people are too risk averse and too much into that lane where they miss on every opportunity that's out there. I think you always have to have that blend of understanding a couple of things. You have to understand your risk factors and where you're comfortable and not comfortable. And then you have to understand why. Because sometimes you may be uncomfortable, but it's not because the deal is too risky, it's you just don't have enough information. Or sometimes you might be looking at something and saying, hey, I feel like this is absolutely no risk in it. Well, then you got to go back and ask yourself, is that reality? And so you always have to play between this blend of risk averse versus open-ended risk. And I think once you find that, like, that middle ground somewhere for you, that works, you have to remember it's just like parenting in a lot of ways. You cannot be one-sided or the other. You really have to play both sides. You have to basically be always in the middle somehow, because you're trying to teach your kids right from wrong. But what is the takeaway? What is the learning component? What is this that was intended because of this lesson that we're in? Sometimes people try to avoid or take risk, and they're trying to be like, oh no, this is not going to work out. And so they avoid it. And I feel like did you realize the kind of learning and the opportunity you just walked away from because you were not willing to go down that path? And quite frankly, unless it's killing you, unless it's hurting someone, you just have to measure where's your stopping. That's it. And so I just think that a lot of times you just have to be willing to understand risk and what it really means. And then anytime that you feel it's either not enough or too much, that just means you got to go back to the lab and dig it.
Man, great answer. I'm learning personally, risk is an opportunity to level up, to grow. Now, of course, that risk could be I'm taking a step back, but as we talked about those failures, if that's even a vocabulary word for you, that was just a learning experience. That was a learning experience. I know not to do that, but I'm going to continue taking these leaps, these calculated risks to grow. And I'm not even just talking like money, right? With my marriage, I'm going to, do this thing that we haven't done before, but like we need to do it. We're going to have this hard conversation. It could be rocky. Like my wife may not like the way I'm saying this, but this is the truth that I feel really strong about. Or with your daughter, like, hey, whatever that risk is. But I think that topic of risk needs to be analyzed. And I love that you said, figure out why we're doing this risk. Why are we not doing this? Is it education? Maybe it doesn't line up with our goals. Hey, you know what? Like our goals are over here and this opportunity sounds great, but it's really not where we're going. And then that could cause the question of what are our goals? Maybe they need to shift more in this direction because this is a lifestyle we're looking for. And this opportunity could help us get there. So thank you so much for saying that. That topic has been coming up more frequently with my conversations with people. And I feel like that's a really important thing for us to ask in that world of risk.
Oh, absolutely. And I think it's under asked sometimes. Like I tell you, the calendar thing, that was a risky move, but it's worked out because it's something that we started to find, oh my gosh, it's working. And again, you hit the nail right on the head where it says, what are we going to learn? Where are we going to go? How do we need to shift things? All that comes from that. And a lot of it has to do with you to have the right faith and the right acumen and mindset in order to take them on.
That was awesome. We're wrapping up, Angel. I want to give our audience one more nugget, if you would. You've given a ton of awesome mindset shifts and things that we can take away and examine ourselves. Are we doing that? Are we thinking that way? The principles that you're talking about, faith, being present in the household, intentionality, all these things, very helpful. If you could, one piece of advice you can give to dads that potentially they could implement today in their role as a father.
Man, there's a lot of ways to go there, but I would tell you that's a great question. And I think that starts with this. If you are a father, it doesn't matter if girl, dad, or any type of fathering, you have to go into it looking at it as what kind of person and father do you want to be? If you don't know that, if you are winging it, how do you know if you're winning or losing in anything? What you need to understand is where is your target? I think sometimes dads are like, hey, I'm a dad. And so they just wake up and they just do their dad thing, whatever that is. It's hard to build consistency. It's hard to understand winning or losing, all these different things that happen as a byproduct. I think about the kind of father I want to be consistently. And then I always go back to, okay, if you want to be X kind of dad, how are you going to get there? And so that's where a lot of, I think, my feel comes from. And maybe the kind of dad that I want to be in some aspects is unobtainable, but in a lot of ways, I'm striving for that unobtainability. And so it's going to force me to lean into learning and growing and execution, all these different things. And ultimately always requiring me to self-check, right? Am I doing the things that lead me to there? And so all I would say is starting with where you want to be and what kind of dad you want to be. And then from there, really try to start putting things in place, reverse engineering that. So that way you can actually try to hit that target.
Angel, thanks so much. To all my dads out there, thank you for your work. I think Angel has mapped out some awesome mindset shifts in my mind, and I know in yours, of starting with that end goal in mind. I love that you said the kind of dad I want to be is probably unobtainable. We should all be saying that. That's exactly how we should be thinking. It should be, the mark should be high because we have one of the most important roles, I would say, ever in human race as dads. Thank you, Angel. Thank you so much for being with us today and for your time. And God bless you in all your endeavors, buddy.
I appreciate that. And thank you for having me. It's great to be part of your show.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Invested Fathers podcast. If you liked this episode, we would love for you to click subscribe and leave us a 5-star review. We appreciate all of your hard work as a father and look forward to our next episode together.